All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We are back for another lesson in A&P. This would be lab practical number 1, the heart. We're going to talk about the heart and the blood vessels today. So here we go. All right. This model is right here. Okay? Can you see that? All right. So let's talk about the outside of the model first, then the insides. All right. These two flaps here, those are the auricles, one on the left and one on the right. The right side is where the blood comes in through the superior vena cava, and on the back side from the inferior vena cava, so that's the right side. What we have here is the aorta, which sends the blood out of the heart. And notice you've got 1, 2, 3 vessels coming out of the top. Those will be identified later. This here is the pulmonary trunk, the one that sends the blood to the lungs. Okay? All right. Next thing we need to know is that we have a dip here between the auricle and the ventricles, and that dip here is called the coronary sulcus. And notice it's also got some fat in it, but that's also where we have a lot of big blood vessels, like this particular one called the right coronary artery. All right. The left coronary artery comes out here, but it immediately splits into two, one going this way and one going down. This one going down is called the left anterior descending, LAD, or the anterior interventricular, between the two ventricles. And the big blue blood vessel that works with it is the great cardiac vein. Okay? Now, please note, you see a lot of fat here as well. That's another sulcus. Okay? That's the dip that these blood vessels know to grow in, and that dip is covered in fat. And this particular thing is called the anterior interventricular sulcus, sulcus dip, in between the ventricles, and it's in the front of the heart. Guess what that forebodes? There's one in the back of the heart. Okay? All right. You never call something left unless there's a right. You don't call something anterior unless there's also a posterior. Okay? All right. I think that covers this. Oh, notice there's a branch coming down here on the edge of the heart, on the right edge of the heart. This is called the marginal artery. We don't call it the right marginal because there is no left marginal. Okay? It's the marginal artery. What is the word margin? Well, when I ask you to write in the margins of your paper, is that the center of the paper or the edge? The edge, right? And that's why it's on the edge of the heart. Okay? And the big vein that works with it is called the small cardiac vein. Notice how the arteries are called coronary and all of the veins are called cardiac to help keep them separate, even though cardiac and coronary both mean the heart. All right? Okay. Cool beans? All right. Now, let's open this up. When we've taken the front off, we can now see the chambers of the heart. There's your right atrium, left atrium. Right ventricle, left ventricle. All right? And, see, vena cava coming in. There's another one coming in from the back, inferior. And what we want to notice is that, see how thin this muscle layer is here? It's made of something called pectinate muscle, as opposed to all of this, which is cardiac muscle. Got it? Okay. Remember our valves. Try before you buy. So tricuspid valve, bicuspid valve. All right? And since this is the pulmonary trunk, here is your pulmonary semilunar valve. All right? Okay. Please note, I've labeled it A, B, C, the 3 tubes that are coming off of our aortic arch. The first one, all right, A, is the brachiocephalic artery. Because, and you'll see in later pictures, this will split into 2. One going down my arm, hence the name brachial, and one heading up to my brain, hence cephalic. All right? These two have already been split. That's why V is the left carotid. It's already on its way up to the brain. And this one is the left subclavian because it's already going under the clavicle on the way to the brachial, on the way to the arm. Then this side hasn't split yet. Okay, that's why it's brachiocephalic. All right, cool. Now this little white piece right here, that's the ligamentum arteriosum, which is the remnant of the ductus arteriosus, which was a tube that helped bring the blood on the way to the fetal lungs straight into the aorta, because there is no blue blood. The baby's blue blood has already been changed to red by mom's placenta. So mom is putting in oxygenated blood, and there's no need to send blood to the lungs because there's no air for the fetus to receive in its lungs anyway. So we bypass it. All right? Cool beans? This is your septum, the interventricular septum, the wall between the two. These big finger-like projections are called papillary muscles. These little strings coming down from your cusps of your valves are called the chordae tendineae, or the heart strings. Yet these little things here, these little finger-like projections, are called the trabeculae carneae, because like the trabeculae that made up not smooth, but spongy bone, these are not made of bone, they're made of carne, meat. They're made of muscle tissue. Does that make sense? All right. Now, all we're doing is spinning it around to the side so we get a side view. And this is on the side that has the pulmonary trunk. This is on the left side. So you got your left pulmonary artery. These are your left pulmonary veins because they're coming in from the left side and going in. Again, your bicuspid valve, etc. So don't flip out. It's all the same stuff, okay? And now we're turning it around to the other side. And this is the back side, actually. When you look at the back side, remember, you had your superior vena cava. This is your inferior vena cava. And this is the back side, but also flipped a little bit so you can see it better. And notice, the fatty material is going to be in the posterior interventricular, between the ventricle sulcus. What I don't like is they put 2 arteries and 2 veins. They really shouldn't have, because in reality, you only have one big artery and one big vein. So let's choose. The big artery is going to be the posterior interventricular artery, and the vein next to it, instead of being the great cardiac vein or the small cardiac vein, this is the middle cardiac vein in the back. Okay? All right. What is this? This big blood vessel gets larger back here, and so we call this the coronary sinus. A sinus is a large venous vessel that collects blood. This is going to collect all the venous blood from your heart. Because remember, you're sending coronary arteries with oxygen. Well, then the veins collect all the deoxygenated blood from the muscle tissue. And it all goes here and then gets dumped in to go out to the pulmonary trunk, to the rest of to the lungs to get oxygenated. And so it's a sinus. It's much larger. The other sinus is in your brain, called the dural sinus, which collects all the blood from the brain. Okay? All right. And again, see, the yellow is adipose tissue in the posterior interventricular sulcus. Cool beanies? And if that's the left, then this, see, that's the left side, that's the right side. Okay, because it came in on that side. This is the back of the heart. So that's right, that's left. Okay? All right. By the way, when your aorta goes up, it's called ascending. The top is called the arch, and the part coming down is called descending. And again, here we are, just slightly moved over. This is the great cardiac vein, which came up the front, and as it goes around to the back, it becomes the coronary sinus. And again, don't worry about these guys on this side. Just realize that's the front of the heart, that's the back of the heart. Okay? And again, the same ABC, brachiocephalic, jugular, and subclavian. Okay? From before. Alrighty. And all we have is tilted a little bit more now so we can see all these same things. Here is what I will tell you. This is just for your own three-dimensional learning, because that's on your test. That's on your test. Okay. That's on your test. Got it? The big stuff. Okay? Not necessarily that little edge. But I didn't have any way to turn it slowly. Got it? So you got this way, this way, this way, this way. Got it? Okay. Now here's another plastic model, and that's this guy. It's a bit bigger, okay? You can definitely tell because instead of it being white for our ligamentum arteriosum, they just painted it half red and half blue, okay? Other models paint the whole thing white because it's just the ligament is not working anymore. But that's what it is, still the ligament not working. And so for this, if this were the picture on your test, just make sure it's not white this time. All right. So look at your auricles, which is the outer flap. You can't see the atrium, that's the hollow space under the flap. And that's because when the atria fill up, they puff out like a balloon, and when they're empty, they flap down and look like an ear. Then they puff up, and they flap down, they puff up, okay? So this obviously means there's no blood in it, which of course is made to look like a dead heart, right? Or a heart that was dissected. Okay, and again, interventricular, we know this is the front, so you get your interventricular sulcus, all right, and your LAD, although I can't see the LAD very well, but I can see the great cardiac vein pretty nicely. There is your small cardiac vein and your median, and so your marginal artery, okay? All right. Now we've opened it up, and we're looking kind of from the underside. Obviously, this is a semilunar and a semilunar. This one is blue, so pulmonary trunk. This one is red, so aorta, aortic valve. And if that's true, then it's tri before your bi. So you got your three cusps, 1, 2, 3, and your bicuspid valve, right? But just seen from another angle. And of course, the point is called the apex of the heart. The top of the heart is called the base. Now you might say to yourself, wait a minute, I thought the base of a pyramid was the bottom of a pyramid. Well, here's the reason why. It works in rehearsal. Okay. When your heart's being formed, it's formed like this. Got it? And then it folds over. So that's the base, and that's the apex. Got it? Besides, the base is where it's attached to your body, and the apex is not attached. Okay? Alrighty, so that covers that. That's a good picture. Mark that. Here, we've opened up the back of the left atrium, and what do we see? A dip right here, and that's your fossa ovalis. You can see it on the one side, on the right side, and you can see it from the left side. That's the hole that used to be in the heart to bypass the lungs, which is now closed up, and it's now a fossa, a dip, not a foramen, a hole, but it's still oval shaped. This is the back of the heart, so this would be your sinus. See, this model is much better. One big artery and one big vein in the back. Alrighty? So posterior interventricular and the median cardiac vein sitting in the posterior sulcus, interventricular sulcus. Alrighty? Okay, vena cava, etc. Alright? Cool beans? Here's another heart model, and the reason I like this one is because it shows two things the other heart models don't. Number one, the pericardial sac. Of course, that sac would be all the way up to here. See where that white line is? That's where the sac is. Okay? And what is this thing? That's the thymus gland. Don't confuse it with the thyroid. The thyroid is further up in the neck, like a little bow tie. This one, yes, it's bilobed also, not quite like a butterfly. And this one's lower. It's actually in the mediastinum area, right above the heart, or mediastinum, depending on how you want to pronounce it. This is significant because here is where the T cells, we're going to learn about in chapter 20, this is where the T cells go to school. Okay? Not 20, but 21, the defense mechanism. That's where the T cells go to school. Alrighty? And of course, we have the same sulcus here, coronary sulcus, interventricular sulcus, anterior in the front. We have our main blood vessels again. Here's our marginal artery and the smaller, small cardiac vein. Cool beans? But like I said, what I like is that we can see the pericardial sac very nicely. All right. And now this one does paint the ligamentum arteriosum white. Yes, now we've opened up the right atrium, and see that little dip there? That's the fossa ovalis. All right. Alrighty. Well, bicuspid, tricuspid, your myocardium. Oh, by the way, which wall is the thickest? Right ventricle or left ventricle? Definitely the left. Why? Because it has to push all the blood out to your arms and legs and have enough pressure left over to bring it all back. Because there is no heart in your hands and your feet to push it back. Okay? I love this one. Another one to keep in mind. This is another model where we're just taking the top off and we're looking straight down onto the four valves. Pulmonary, semilunar, aortic. Okay? Then try before you buy. Okay? Back here is the coronary sinus. This traveling all the way up and spinning around is the great cardiac vein. See, here's the right coronary artery spinning all the way around. Here's the left, very short because it immediately goes into the circumflex artery that goes all the way to the back, and the LAD, the left anterior descending going down the front. So it's really only called the left coronary artery in this little space. Okay? Now, not the first one, but the second one is the marginal artery. Okay? And of course, the small cardiac vein next to it. Cool beans? All right. Always keep in mind, the model makers are trying to show you red means oxygenated blood, blue means no oxygen in the blood. And that's why that's the pulmonary all the way to the lungs, and that's the aortic all the way to your body. How about that? All right, now, the cardiac sarcomere. Keep going. Yeah. Okay. This is a model of a sarcomere. What's that? Just a tiny piece of one heart muscle. This is not the whole muscle. It is a sarcomere. A sarcomere means a piece from Z disc to Z disc. All right? And what we want to do is realize it's just like the skeletal muscle sarcomere that we use in 210. All right? That's the one that's going to be on your test. Mitochondria, okay? All of these yellow tubes here, sarcoplasmic reticulum, and then of course here is where you have your A bands, and your A band, and your I band, which is lighter in color. See, dark versus light, because this only has actin. This one has actin and myosin. Alrighty. This hollow space here is called the H zone, and then the dark part is called the M line. No big deal. This tube is called the T tubule. Please note, the T tubule is nice and big and wide, as opposed to the thin one in your skeletal muscle. And then all of these bulges sitting on top of the tube are your cisternae, which hold the calcium, as opposed to the bulges on the side of the T tubule in your skeletal muscle. All right. Okay? Now, all of the little orange dots are your glycosomes, little sugar bodies, and that's how we store sugar in our muscles, because we can't be eating and drinking the whole time we're running a marathon. And you also store myoglobin, there's no picture of that, but that's how we store oxygen in the muscles. Cool beans? I think that pretty much covers all of that. Okay? That's it.